society is going through. And the spark of this was actually the police brutality against Khaled Saeed, a blogger who was tortured and killed publicly in Alexandria. And we know the rest of the story, the creation of the Kullina Khaled Saeed Facebook group. We are all Khaled Saeed. They actually, this is not the first time they go to the street. This group and April 6 and other movements, they went before, but they were in the hundreds only. And they have their video clips telling to the Egyptian people, we went for you before. We don't need this. We were, most of them are actually, if you looked at their background, are upper middle class or upper class young men. So they're not suffering. They can continue their jobs and their lives, and you know it can continue with a good life in Egypt. But they still came down. And after that, you know, because of the conditions that Egypt was going through, the right grievances, the widespread grievances, the second time, people this struck a chord with people, and a lot of millions actually responded to their calls at a later stage, and we saw. So, and then there was obviously the role for the army. The army, thankfully, did not fire on protesters. And I think that was pretty much made clear even before the army statement that probably the mid ranks and the low ranks are not in that mood, and the senior ranks as well, you know, did not give them orders because of the security dilemma I explained before.
The army then key in resolving this crisis. Well, let us just remind our viewers, Omar, of what's been happening over the last few hours for those of you who are just joining us now on Al Jazeera as we continue this extended coverage of the events in Egypt. At least 13 people have been killed in the violence in Tahrir or Liberation Square, and more than 1,200 injured. Alan Fisher now reports on how the day unfolded.
The confrontations, the anger, the bitterness continues. The army has moved in to keep both sides apart, but battles are still being fought around Cairo. There are continuing reports of mobs hunting in gangs for opponents, attacking buildings. Speaking in Washington, US President Barack Obama said he was praying for peace in Egypt.
We pray that the violence in Egypt will end, and that the rights and aspirations of the Egyptian people will be realized, and that a better day will dawn over Egypt and throughout the world.
Protests continue in other places around the country, this one in the second biggest city, Alexandria. Egypt's new Prime Minister has promised an investigation into the serious fighting on Wednesday and the ongoing violence.
Those people who came to Tahrir Square came with the intention to create violence and riot, simply for the reason that there were two groups, opposing groups in two different locations. I cannot tell what happened, but the situation added fuel to fire, and all these will be investigated.
Fear walks the streets in Cairo, strange faces confronted. These men are pro-Mubarak supporters, caught and placed in a makeshift prison in the square. These are the ones behind all of this, says the man. Many have been injured here. Doctors have done what they can to patch them up. Others have arrived ready for battle.
This helmet is something I bought from home, from a neighbour.
These pictures show where the fighting has been fiercest, the devastation greatest. And still, it goes on. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera.
Well, let's get the latest now from Tahrir or Liberation Square. I'm joined on the line by Wahel Khalil. He's a pro-democracy activist who is in Liberation Square right now. Wahel, thanks for being with us. Tell us what the situation is around you.
There is a high-spirited presence in the square now. The mobilization for today increased the numbers from yesterday, and the siege that we were under and the anxiety that we felt yesterday from the attacks of the allegedly pro Mubarak supporter who are really stunned, is nearly over. We're still getting skirmishes, if you can say, at the other side of the Tahrir Square, and you can hear ambulances moving around, carrying injured people back and forth.
What is that I'm hearing in the background, Wahel? Is that the sound of gunfire, perhaps, I'm hearing in the background, or not?
No. What you're hearing are ambulances. There are no gunfire in the background. However, I was told of one of the doctors in our makeshift hospital, in one of our makeshift hospitals, that there were 3 gunshots people wounded with gunshots today. And that was until maybe 6 o'clock, which I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows where the shots coming from. But the fear and the anxiety from yesterday is slightly over, and people are back inside the square, not on the entrance to defending them.
Wahel, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You told me that there were a lot of people in the square today at this time of night. What are your plans for the next few hours? What are you planning to do tomorrow, Friday? And keeping in mind, of course, that tomorrow there's a curfew that's in place throughout the day. What are you going to be doing exactly?
There are curfews throughout the day tomorrow. I've been here and I haven't been listening to you.
Yes, well, there's an all-day curfew that's being set up for tomorrow, from what we understand from our correspondents on the ground. What are your plans, you and your friends? What are you planning on doing in the next few hours?
Well, to be honest, curfew has never been of any significance to most of the demonstrators. To some it was, to be honest. The mobilization has been growing, culminating in the Friday, the Tuesday. Tomorrow is another mobilization with large numbers, and I think the whole day curfew is another attempt by the government not only to curb on the demonstration, because curfews don't, but to really annoy the population and turn it against the protesters. And this is one of the tactics that they've been using consistently, is to hold the protesters responsible for the government's act to disrupt the normal lives of citizens by shutting up down banks and preventing people from getting paid especially at the beginning of the month.
Okay, Wahel, thank you very much for speaking to us. That was Wahel Khalil, a pro-democracy activist in Tahrir Square. Let's get the view now from Alexandria, because again, these protests haven't just been taking place in the capital, Cairo, but in various other cities, including Suez, Alexandria, the second largest city in Egypt. Ahmed Makawi is a pro-democracy activist. He joins us now on the line from Alexandria. Ahmed, tell us what's the situation like in Alexandria. Are people still protesting?
Currently in Alexandria, the protests have ended, and some of the protesters are staying over the night at Shuhada Square. Generally today, the protests were very big in number, because lots of people are protesting, especially because they saw our friends in Tahrir Square yesterday. It was very peaceful in Alexandria today. There was no problems or violence in the protests all day. The protests ended around 2 hours ago peacefully. Then the protesters went to have their night in Shuhada Square.
Okay, so what are your plans? I'm going to ask you the same question. Your plans for the next few hours. Are you again in Alexandria there going to be taking to the streets on Friday?
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, tomorrow there will be protests after Friday prayers. We will start after Friday prayers. It will start from all major mosques in Alexandria, but the main one will be Al-Qadi Ibrahim Mosque, which is the biggest one here. currently, there's no activities being happening in Alexandria in the next few hours. Mainly in the morning,